It was the hush before afternoon dismissal at Maplewood Primary, that strange pocket of quiet in which dust dances through auditorium light and the scent of stale juice boxes lingers in the curtains. Gregory Finch stood on the stage, a lone figure among props that had entertained generations of 8-year-olds. He liked this silence. It felt earned after the laughter, the clapping, the bobbing rows of freckled faces mesmerized by painted wooden mouths. Gregory packed his marionettes one by one, humming a children's tune he no longer remembered learning. He had chosen puppetry precisely because strings did as they were told. Children might heckle, teachers might fret over lesson plans, but the marionettes never suggested alternate endings, never improvised punchlines that fell flat. You pulled, they bowed. You slackened, they slept. At 46, Gregory's life had been reduced to that manageable equation of tension and release. The van was outside, its cargo shelves lined with velvet pouches, its cedar smell faintly masking turpentine. The auditorium door clicked shut. He felt the latch quicker than he heard it, as though the sound arrived a beat late. Gregory pivoted. No one stood there. Still, a marionette rustled behind him. The jester, clad in harlequin diamonds, hung 3 meters away from where Gregory was certain he'd placed it. Rope toes brushed the floorboards like a polite child testing a puddle. Gregory stared, waiting for logic to catch up. Maybe the jester's hook hadn't seated well, maybe vibration from traffic. Clack! The wooden head tilted. Its smile, carved wide already, seemed to widen further, though Gregory knew that was impossible. For a second, the puppet's painted eyes fixed on him with such intent, he found himself whispering, "We're finished for today." It sounded, absurdly, like an apology. When he reached to steady the dangling body, the strings quivered in his palm, trembling like plucked violin hairs. He locked the mannequins into their travel cases, snapped every latch, and chalked the incident up to fatigue. Last night's drive had been long. He hadn't eaten. He told himself all the banal reasons nerves invent, yet as he wheeled the cases down the ramp, he could swear an extra set of footsteps padded behind his own, scuffing at exactly the pauses where the jester's half-inch shoes would land. That evening, parked beside a hedgerow at the Willow Glen Motel, Gregory unlatched the first case to inspect for damage. The jester lay exactly as positioned, knees bent, chin tucked, strings coiled. He touched the wood. Cold, inanimate. Feeling ridiculous, he said, "All right, joke's over." He waited, half expecting the marionette to rise on unseen currents. Nothing. Relief arrived with takeout noodles and a made-for-TV thriller. He slipped into bed earlier than usual, but at 1:13 a.m., a muffled thump jarred him awake. The click of a miniature heel followed by the lightest squeak of wire told him everything without telling him anything. Gregory's room was dark except for a sliver of parking lot neon bleeding through the drapes. Something blocked part of that glow, a silhouette perched on the dresser, limbs splayed. It was the soldier marionette. Rifle across lap, helmet askew, the doll looked too patient, as though waiting for orders. Gregory's first reflex was anger. How dare vandals stage a prank with his property? He lunged for the light switch. That single act of illumination should have petrified the puppet into harmless lumber. Instead, the soldier slid off the dresser, landing not on strings but on jointed knees. It crawled 3 steps and collapsed, lifeless again. Gregory's scream died in his throat, strangled by a memory so swift it left him trembling. Black powder residue, the acrid stink of gunfire, a boy's hysterical laughter echoing through an abandoned orchard. He couldn't place the scene, yet it felt as authentic as last weekend's breakfast. He grabbed the puppet, stuffed it back into its case, and barricaded the latch with duct tape. Then he taped every remaining case. Sleep never returned. At sunrise, he drove to the next gig. Adrenaline guiding the wheel, he told jokes to second graders, manipulated dialogue he'd recited 100 times, and pretended the tremor in his hands was simply performance zeal. Children adored it. Teachers thanked him. But when the audience filed out, Gregory noticed the maiden puppet lying face down off stage, skirts stained with some dark substance. Paint? No. Berry wine? Blood? He checked the capillaries of her carved wrists, streaked crimson. Not impossible, he muttered, trying to remain pragmatic. Accidental spillage from lunch sacks, maybe. Yet as he dabbed the stain, he saw that the maiden's fingers had been repositioned. Yesterday they were sculpted into a shy wave. Now they clutched an invisible object, something small, cylindrical, something like a glass vial. Another spear of déjà vu stabbed him, a basement smelling of chemicals sweet. A girl whispering, "Shh, I won't tell if you don't." Then glass shattering, coughing, panic. He rocked back on his heels, searching the air for rational footing. There was none. That night, he did not stop at a motel. He drove home to the dilapidated Victorian he'd inherited from an aunt, the one house whose every creaking board he understood. Inside his studio, he placed each marionette on its stand, strings drawn taut to ceiling eye screws, as if preparing for rehearsal. Then he sat cross-legged, camera recording, waiting to catch the trick. Midnight. 1, 2, nothing. Exhaustion pulled him under at the foot of the stage. He woke to applause, phantom, but unmistakable. A polite smatter rising, peaking, dying. Gregory's video camera blinked red. On stage, the entire troupe of marionettes performed, not danced haphazardly performed, hitting marks with choreographed precision. The soldier stood center, barrel raised. The maiden knelt, pleading. The jester jaunted behind, miming laughter so manic Gregory almost heard it, and in the corner, a figure he had carved years ago but rarely used. A charcoal-feathered crow flapped against its strings, turning its beak toward Gregory like a gavel proclaiming judgment. He could not look away. The soldier's rifle spat silence, yet Gregory smelled cordite. The maiden fell. The jester clapped. The crow croaked once, such a foul human-like syllable that Gregory bolted upright. When he lunged forward, the tableau froze, marionettes limp, heads hanging. The footage confirmed it hadn't been a hallucination. Frame by frame, wood limbs defied gravity. No wires other than his own, no visible puppeteer. And worst of all, the date stamp. April 8th. Tomorrow would be April 9th. That mattered. He didn't know why, but dread told him it mattered immensely. Fear can be persuasive, but curiosity enslaves. Gregory pored over attic boxes, searching for context. He found an old newspaper from 29 years ago. April 9 tragedy at Briar Hollow. 2 teens arrested in fatal barn blaze. Victim identified as Eleanor Clark, 17. The mugshots were blurred, yet as Gregory angled the page into lamplight, the left photo resolved into a younger him, or someone nearly identical, eyes bright with defiance. Name beneath, Greg Clark. Clark, not Finch. His mother's maiden surname. He read on. Charges reduced, memory suppressed beneath juvenile seals. Court-ordered counseling for pyromania. Army Cadet Rehab Program. The details lined up like a confession, appearing in his own handwriting. The soldier, the arson, the maiden, the chemicals. Gregory slammed the box shut, heart savage in his ribs. How could he forget possible murder? Therapy, adoption, relocation. There were mechanisms for erasure, he knew, but confronted with proof, his psyche buckled. He ran to the studio as a father runs toward a sudden scream, bracing for gore. The marionettes had rearranged again. This time the crow opened its wings wide, strings crossed like latticed work. Suspended in the tangle was a charred matchbook. It bore the faded logo of a convenience store 2 counties over. He plucked it free with trembling fingers. Inside, only 1 match remained. He understood then. The marionettes were unveiling scenes sequentially, 1 criminal act per night, culminating on the anniversary. Tonight the finale would play, with or without his attendance. The last matchbook begged ignition, but what would burn? The house? Another victim? Gregory himself? He considered police, clergy, psychiatry, any authority that might absolve him or at least intervene, yet the notion of arriving at a station, marionettes in arms, babbling about autonomous wooden confessions felt impossible. He couldn't even guarantee he was sane. So he settled on witnesshood. If the past demanded theater, he would sit front row and meet its stare. He set fresh batteries in the camera, positioned 3 tripods, and at 11:30 sat in a rocking chair facing the stage. He placed the last match on his lap, daring the dolls to retrieve it. The minute hand nudged midnight. Wind-rattled shutters, a storm brewed, perfect for tragedy. Strings twitched, heads lifted. Show time. The jester bounded forward first, its bells muted yet somehow jingling in Gregory's gut. It cartwheeled to stage left, stopping before a scale model of a barn Gregory hadn't noticed earlier. Had they constructed it? He saw straw glued to popsicle rafters, doors fashioned from paint stir sticks. The maiden entered, handing the jester a miniature lantern with what looked alarmingly like a real candle aflame inside. Gregory rose involuntarily, but something unseen pressed him back into the rocker. He could breathe, blink, sweat, but nothing more. The soldier marched on, rifle poised at the barn as though commanding it not to burn, yet the crow loomed above, wings beating gusts that fluttered the red velvet backdrop. Then came a new puppet, one Gregory didn't recall carving. A boy in denim, freckles dotted with ash. Its scalp bore a jagged crack, as though split by falling beam. The puppet's signboard read, "Eleanor's brother." Gregory's breath fractured. He remembered now. The second tragedy. A survivor injured while rescuing animals. The article had misprinted the name. He'd blocked it out. The boy puppet crawled toward Gregory, dragging strings like IV tubes. It looked up, and its jaw opened with a squeal of wooden hinges. "Strike the match!" It was not ventriloquism. The words vibrated off plaster, echoing. Gregory shook his head, tears spilling. "Strike the match!" the choir of marionettes repeated. Voices overlapping, maiden soft, soldier stern, crow guttural. They advanced. For every centimeter they moved, Gregory's chest tightened, as if strings bound him too. The match on his lap throbbed like a heartbeat. A memory unfurled, merciless. Teenage Gregory, dared by a laughing companion to set straw alight for thrills. Dolorant, too generous, flames greedy, roof collapsing. Eleanor entering to save a foal, never exiting, her brother screaming, crack of gunshot, warning shot, misfire. Gregory couldn't be sure. Trauma had edited the footage. Despair became ignition. He snatched the match, striking it on the rocker's arm. Sulfur hissed. At once the marionettes froze, as though their cue had been met. The tiny candle extinguished. The barn model flickered out of existence like a film cut. Only the burning match remained, its halo quivering. "Now what?" Gregory rasped. The crow's beak opened. Atonement. He waited for further instruction, but wooden joints creaked and fell silent. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. If he dropped the match, he knew the parched stage curtains would catch faster than thought. The house was old, wired poorly, dry as tinder. It would go up like Briar Hollow's barn. At last, comprehension settled. The marionettes wanted replication, a ritual of consequence. Burn the stage, burn the puppets, burn the puppeteer. Complete the reenactment, and balance the scales. Gregory pictured headlines. Children's entertainer dies in performing arts inferno. Would that satisfy the wraiths he'd sculpted? Or was there another path? He noticed the video recorders blinking. Evidence. Confession. Perhaps fire wasn't the only currency of justice. He stood, free now that the match was lit. Every puppet eye tracked him. He walked to the sink, ran water, and drowned the flame. A hiss, a wisp, and it was gone. The house remained unburned. The puppet sagged, drained of animation. Yet a final twitch rippled through the soldier, raising its rifle 1 inch in salute. Morning found Gregory at the police station, 3 cameras and 6 marionettes in a duffel. He requested to file a statement about an unsolved arson from 1994. The desk sergeant eyed him, incredulous, until Gregory produced the footage. They watched in silence as wood sprang to life, as crime reenacted itself minute by minute. No special effects could explain it. The room felt colder when it ended. Afterward, detectives interviewed him 16 hours straight. He surrendered everything: name change, sealed records, manipulated memory. He pled for excavation of the orchard he suddenly realized might still hide spent shell casings. The trial months later was swift. Voluntary confession, corroborating evidence, and a community eager for closure left little room for doubt. The court noted mental duress, good conduct since, but the law required a debt. Sentencing 5 years, parole eligible in 3, plus mandatory counseling. Gregory accepted it with the calm of a man who finally understood the rules of the theater he'd walked into decades ago. On the day he reported to Midvale Correctional, he packed no suitcase. Yet in the processing bay, the guard handed him a brown parcel stamped "Returned to Sender." Inside were the marionettes, strings severed, limbs inert. A note fallen among them read, "Property deemed non-evidentiary. That night, cell lights dimmed." Gregory lay on his cot pondering whether the marionettes would ever move again, or whether their dance ended the moment truth stepped into spotlight. He feared one more performance, perhaps a tableau of prison riots, or a final act called end of sentence. But nothing stirred. Still, sometimes after lockdown, he swore he heard faint wooden applause echoing from the storage closet down the ward. If he closed his eyes, he could almost see the crow perched on a shelf, watching to be sure the next line he delivered was honest. He intended to keep it that way.